and welcome back to Four Corners of the Galley. I'm your host PBO, and you're joining me on another edition of Unsolved, the murders of Biggie and Tupac. We've moved on to episode 2, Nobody Talks. So let's do a little rat. Last week we had basically I'd call it the Biggie episode because it starts with Biggie. You see him on his last day talking to his mom. We get to see the death of Biggie. We get to see him at the party and all of that stuff happens. And then we kind of get to see how Biggie first met Pac, and that's kind of where it wrapped up. So this week, they started right off the back. First off, let me say, this is how you start a show. That intro was exactly the way they should have started something last week. It should have been something more bad boy-centric. It should have started off in the party or something. That was my one big gripe, is the way it started off, it didn't really feel like it was a Biggie and Tupac murder. It was more like them trying to show some other stuff, but that's besides the point. This week was great. Starting showing off the death row chain and all the blings and diamonds that's on them, and then moving to the death row center and showing the guy getting his chain on and the whole deal. That was absolutely fabulous. I love the way that was set up. I love the way that started. What a great intro into the whole thing, showing all the glam and glitz that go with it. Then right directly afterwards, you get the famous incident that basically started the entire fight at Vegas for the Tyson, which is you got some of Death Row and their boys out at the Lakewood Center, which was a hot mall in the 90s. I actually worked for a Foot Locker in the 90s, so I know about a lot of the different hot malls, and Lakewood Center was a big mall back in the days because it had the first ever World Foot Locker on the West Coast, so it always got a lot of the hottest shoes, so I see why that fight happened over there. Plus, it's kind of like Central Grand. It's kind of like off to the side. Lakewood's not really in the hood, it's kind of down below it, so I can see why you would have mutual rival gangs meeting at this spot. And let me just tell you, in the 90s at the mall, this happened a lot. There was a ton of fights that would break out between the Clips and the Bloods, so this is very accurate, and it actually is an event. So you got Orlando Anderson and his boys, the Crips, going against the Bloods, and they get into a little scuffle. The death row chain gets ripped. It doesn't get taken, but it gets broken and snatched, and then kind of goes off, and then boom. That's how that whole event starts, and then they kick it right back into the detective stuff. So I will say that the biggest gripe that I think I have about the show right now is it really is bouncing around, because we are at the beginning and it's trying to establish everything, and it's just jumping timeline to timeline. One thing they did do good was they put dates again back at the beginning, so at least we could kind of see where we were going at the start. But the minute that they get to the middle, and they want you to do basically character recognition. So if you don't recognize the character, you're not going to understand the timeline. So that is a little frustrating because it bounces around a lot, and they're trying to show you so much. They're trying to pack so much into the single episode to give you so much backstory and information on what's going on with each person. It is a little hard to follow. That besides the point, there was a lot of good things. So now we got Detective Pool by Jimmy Smith. He's now back. This is 1997. We're back there. And they're on the Biggie case, and they're moving forward. And now they have the tip line going, and they're showing all the different elements of the tip line. And then they go to their boss, and they want to go to Vegas. So this is kind of cool. It's kind of like a parallel thing they show. So at the same time that these gentlemen are going to Vegas to see the footage of the events that happened in September '96, you also get right afterwards, you get the story retold by Tupac's actual personal bodyguard, Frank, who was his personal bodyguard, and he retells the story. So first you get there, and you get to see the reenactment of the famous Orlando Anderson scene that happened, that everybody, pre-cell phones, we got to see the CTC footage from the Tyson fight, and that's the only way we saw this footage. But this was kind of cool to see a reenactment, seeing that Pac was really hyped up off of Tyson. Him and Tyson were boys forever. He used to always write rhymes to Tyson when he was in prison. They were just really close boys at all times. I also read an all-star interview where Tyson was going to meet up with Pac and Suge at that club afterwards, and that never obviously went down. So they show the fight. They show it all breaks down, how Pac rushed Orlando Anderson because he was all hyped up, and then all that melee breaks out. And then it really goes back to the racial overtone that they've been really focusing on in this show, where the Vegas PD is showing the LAPD this footage, and they're just lambasting him, calling Tupac by his wrong name, calling him just a thug. I mean, they're just talking mess about all these gentlemen. Nobody can come above it because they don't care. In their minds, they've already been established. Compton PD is trying to tell them that if something, it might be a little more. They don't want to listen. You could just see in the 90s, because of just the racism and things that happened in America, they weren't really looking to try to solve this case. They just could care less. I mean, you had one individual Pool who was really fighting, but everybody else was just kind of like, bunch of thugs, who cares? Gangsters, So you can see it was definitely frustrating for these two gentlemen from LAPD trying to get this right and really trying to work it, but everybody else kind of stonewalling them. It also goes back to the theme of the whole nobody talks. As they're trying to find out information, no one's telling anybody anything, and that's what's also just crazy. So the detectives in the 97 one go and finally meet up with Frank, Tupac's bodyguard, and then they get the whole story from Frank. And Frank gives you this great retelling, kind of like how the Wilshire detective did for Biggie's thing, where he breaks down and re-shows the events that happened that night. So you kind of, if you've seen All Eyes on Me, you kind of know how this night went and how a lot of the things, they're very similar. A lot of the events are very truthful. Kind of the same events happen. I don't know about you. Every single time I see this Vegas scene, it almost brings me to tears. That day, that night, I remember fully what was going on at this point. I remember that next day and hearing all this nonsense. It felt like they just took the greatest rapper to me. To me, he's one of the greatest rappers. Him and Biggie are two of the greatest rappers to ever live. To me, Pac is the greatest poet, and Biggie's the greatest storyteller, and that's how I see the two of them. But I remember just the air being taken out of the room and out of everywhere you went in LA because Pac was killed. I mean, it was just nonsense. I mean, he wasn't officially killed, but he was on life support. And I remember speaking to a lot of my friends back in the days, and everybody, we all assumed that he was going to survive because he's already been shot before. So we just assumed he was just a superhero. Like no matter how many times they try to kill and shoot this man, he's going to live. So it was crazy to see all the different events and also show you how just ruthless Pac was with that whole thing. I mean, that was crazy. One of the other elements I did like that they was a little previous. They do a little flashback where they go to Fat Burger, which Fat Burger was the business back in the 90s. I mean, that was the burger place. Before it now gained any fame in LA, I'm sorry, Fat Burger was number one. So they go to Fat Burger in Long Beach. Shit goes in, and you got some football players from Long Beach Poly just kind of seen him. And they have this little interaction with Pac, and you could really see how on edge just days before he went to Vegas, how on edge he was about everything and how nervous he was about the whole deal because, I mean, these kids just kind of walked up to him and he freaks out and then he kind of gains his composure and he comes back. I must say, the gentleman playing Tupac is doing an amazing job of really showing the depths of Tupac and showing from his rage to his friendliness, to his humor, to his everything. I mean, he's doing an amazing job of showing all the different ranges and different perspectives that Pac really was. So I thought that was also very great. So you got that, all that's going on. There's got the huge fight. They see all the stuff. They get to see the footage again. They get to talk to the bodyguard, and they get to find out some more information. So they're kind of still trying to piece all things together. Then at the same time, they take us to 2006, and we finally get to meet this task force that Josh Duhamel, Detective Kane, has put together. And let me say, when they first do a pan of the room, I was like, wow, look at these cast and characters they brought together. So I don't know if you guys know a few of them, but I'm going to start with Mr. Wendell Price. He is an amazing actor. This guy is Bunk Moreland in The Wire. I mean, man, the fact they got Wendell Price in there and he's playing a little different character, seems like he's got some racial issues that he doesn't like certain things, so I really like the way he's going. And then you got Billy Walsh from Entourage in there, and he's playing this hilarious dude wearing sandals and things of that nature. I thought that was great. Definitely a cast of characters. I thought that was hilarious. They got everybody in there. Very interesting. They started off where they start going into the case, and they come up with 3 scenarios, basically. And this is the 3 scenarios that they feel happened to Biggie in 2006. Scenario 1 is Suggs and the Bloods set up Biggie, and that's what they feel is going to happen. Scenario 2, it was the police and Suge set up Biggie, and then the third one is the Crips. So obviously, in the forthcoming episodes, we're going to see, I think, all 3 of these scenarios play out, where they're going to try to chase each one of these scenarios and see where each one of them leads to. So that's going to be very interesting to see how it goes in the future. One of my big concerns I do have with this show is they've already given us basically the 2 crescendos. They've given us Biggie's death and they've given us Pac's death in the first 2 episodes. So I'm really nervous, and hopefully that this show gains momentum and steam and finishes off strong, because you've already had the 2 biggest events happen in each of these gentlemen's lives. Yes, I know they have a ton of things in the middle that they can talk about, but this is more about the murders of these 2 individuals and the events that happen afterwards instead of really the relationship. So makes me kind of nervous. I am still really intrigued because I really did love this episode and all the death row elements and the Vegas stuff and the Tupac and how they focus on him. I loved all that part about it, so I thought that was great. So they break into these two task force. One goes to LA to see one individual, another one goes to Philly to see another individual. Both these individuals are Crips and friends of Biggie at the time, and said that they were down below at the Peterson. One comes to find out that he's a screenwriter and he was trying to write he was trying to make a movie with Big, and that's how he met him, because the other one's a boy with Biggie, and he's like, look, I had nothing to do with it. They get information from the LA guy where they kind of try to, you can see them try to build the tension in the show too, where they're trying to build it up to the commercial and then they cut and then they come back and it's like they don't really pay off. They did a good job with the Frank one in The Bodyguard where they told it, where he builds up and then he tells the whole story. At least that was good. But basically, like, a lady who they think might be a lookout was shading this guy at the party, and then afterwards when she saw him down below was really intrigued about Biggie. Could be nothing, could be something really huge, so who knows, but they're definitely running with these theories. So that's basically what the 2006 task force, they kind of had the least, I mean, they put them in those two rooms to kind of interview, but it wasn't really more about them on this one. It was more about Pac, Vegas, Detective Poole going to Vegas and him seeing the whole events and having to deal with the Vegas PD and all that, interacting back and forth. It was more like let's go to Vegas and let's get all these things worked out. So that was interesting. The one crazy thing you do find out about Detective Poole, though, is he has a picture on his thing and it says Gary Poole is missing. I'm assuming that's his brother, because based on the date of birth, it was 1960, so that means he would be about 37 at this point. So now I'm assuming Poole is about that same age. So that's intriguing to see where that leads. It also does show Poole where his friend called him out last time, saying that I see these family pictures, but I see no family, and you live in that apartment, and he's in that apartment. He's very sad. So basically, he's a workaholic. That's why he took this Biggie case very seriously, because you can tell, because he's a huge workaholic, and he wanted to really, really be the one that solved this case. So I did like the elements, and Jimmy Simpson is playing an amazing job as Poole. I really like the way he's giving it, so that was cool. So yeah, so you got all the different elements, and then it seems like they feel like they're going to finish every single episode where they put Biggie and Pac together and they show the relationship that a lot of us did not get to see, and I thought that was cool. Now, I don't know if this is real or not, because one movie has a different way. I mean, no one's going to account for this phone call because these two gentlemen are no longer with us, and who knows if Pac really did call Biggie before he came up to the studio, and that's when the famous jacking of Pac happened at Quam Studios in New York. So I don't know. It seems kind of crazy that he told Big he's going to be up there, he's going to be in New York the next day, and then all that nonsense starts to pop off. So that's kind of crazy to see where that goes. But I do like that they always end with Pac and Biggie, even though we do get a lot of the cop stuff and the searching and kind of putting the pieces together. They want to make sure that you understand that the relationship between the two of them is the main cog and piece in this whole thing, and that these guys were friends. And how did two friends and two guys that admire each other get into this bitter war? They was either media made up or whatever, but both of them ended up losing their lives. So that's definitely something big that they, I guess, are going to unwind in the future. So, well, there you have it, folks. That's episode 2, Nobody Talks, of Unsolved, the Biggie and Tupac murders. So yeah, that was definitely an interesting episode. I loved all the Tupac elements, the death row, and the Vegas stuff. I thought that was great. I do like that they're building the case and you get to meet more of the task force. But I am nervous, and hopefully some bigger things come. I feel like we've gotten both events now, and now it's like, okay, show us something that we don't know about, or push this forward so we really know that the narrative is moving. Because right now I just feel like we're just gaining all the information, and we're just collecting information, and we still haven't pushed forward with this case. So, all right, folks. Well, there you go. I'll see you guys all back next week. Until next time, good night, Ted.